I just remind Councillor Edgington and Councillor Saxon, you still got your microphones on.
Thank you.
Apologise.
No problem. Just don't want you doing anything you shouldn't be doing. Okay, thank you for attending tonight's meeting. Just before we get started on tonight's meeting, I'd like to have 1 minute silence for the remembrance of Sir Ray Clements. So if we could just have a minute silent, please. Thank you. He will be missed by many and remembered by everybody. So I thought it was right to pay a minute's silence. Thank you for your time. Welcome to tonight's meeting, Wednesday the 25th of November via Zoom. Good evening if you're out there watching and joining us tonight. Agenda item number 1, minutes of the last meeting is attached. To receive, consider or adopt otherwise the minutes of the meeting of the council held on Wednesday the 7th of October 2020.
Move it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Do I have a seconder?
Mr. Mayor, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Edgerton. All in favour, please raise your virtual hands. Please raise your virtual hands or your hands on screen. We can't see them. Thank you. It's carried. Thank you. Lower your hands. Okay, agenda item number 2. To note apologies received by the Town Clerk prior to the meeting. Town Clerk?
Mayor, we have apologies from councillors Blackburn and Empson.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 3. To receive any declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Councillor Skegness?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Yes, at the financial section, I shall be blanking the screen out, or the town clerk can put me in the waiting room, which is ever easiest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Agenda item number 4, public participation. Residents of Skegness are invited to send in questions by email about any item on the published agenda to arrive at Skegness, info@skegness.org.uk no later than noon on Tuesday the 24th of November. These will be published within the minutes together with the council's response. Any comments relevant to the council decision will be read out during this item, but limited to no more than 1 per resident, and the total of what can be achieved is 15 minutes chosen in accordance with the order received. Town Clerk?
Mayor, there is indeed a letter that's come in that's in relation to the agenda item relating to trees, which is item number, let me get it, 13 on the agenda. I'll read out the letter, and then, as I say, we can consider that when we get to the individual item.
Thank you.
Dear sirs, I write in relation to the tree survey and proposed works in relation to the trees on Coronation Walk, Skegness. You are asked to consider this correspondence at your Skegness Town Council meeting set to take place on Wednesday, the 25th of November. Item 13 of the agenda for the meeting deals with the tree survey report taken place on both Vine and Coronation Walk, and the correspondence is to be considered in relation to item 13 and the works proposed or not. My property is in Wilfred Grove and backs directly onto Coronation Walk. I've been liaising with Kate Ford, amongst others, over the last 6 months in relation to the trees that heavily overhang onto my property. In addition to the overhanging, I have also commented that some of the trees appear to sway when windy, and large branches from the overhanging trees often break and land on my property. I have 2 small children who play in my garden on a regular basis. The safety of my family is of course paramount, but I would also add that the overhanging of branches in general causes a nuisance. I've been advised on a number of occasions that works will only be undertaken to trees sorry, I've got somebody coming in, trying to get into the waiting room. I have to let them in first. Back. I've been advised on a number of occasions that works will only be undertaken to trees that are considered by the report to pose a danger. I've also been advised of the somewhat complicated relationship as to the ownership of the trees and the responsibility for maintenance of the trees. I understand that some of the trees on this walk have on them a tree preservation order. I would agree that the trees are beautiful and the walks add a lovely feel to residents. I myself use the walk a lot and would want to see the area conserved as much as possible. However, conservation does not negate the need to maintain the trees and prevent them from causing a nuisance to neighbouring properties. Under normal circumstances, consent is required when undertaking work to the trees that are subject to the TPO. What does not seem to be considered is that there are exceptions to the need for obtaining consent. When reaching your decision, you are asked to review Regulation 14(1)(a) and 1(c) of the Town and Country Planning Tree Preservation England Regulations 2012. This regulation confirms as follows. Consent is not required for any of the following activities: the cutting down, topping, lopping or uprooting of a tree so far as it may be necessary for the prevention or abatement of a nuisance. Such works are urgently necessary to remove an immediate risk of serious harm. As a solicitor, I'm well aware of my rights to bring civil claims both against the owner and those responsible for the trees for the trespass into my airspace, nuisance and obstruction of my right to light to windows on my building. I have contacted the council with a view to avoiding the need for litigation. It's not in anyone's interest if the matter can be resolved without the expense and paperwork required to litigate. If necessary, however, I will take action. I would advise those reviewing the work required to review relevant case law, in particular L.E. Jones Insurance Brokers versus Portsmouth City Council 2002 EWCA Civ. This case establishes that where an authority has delegated its functions in relation to trees to another authority, that the other authority will also be liable for any nuisance caused by trees. Where authorities have been delegated responsibility for trees, they should be aware that they will be liable in nuisance, even though the trees may be owned by another authority, and regardless of any contractual liability owned to the highway authority. My intention in contacting the council is and always has been to resolve the issue informally. I trust that this correspondence is included alongside the survey in order to assist council in reaching a sensible decision as to what works is necessary on the trees on Coronation Walk. And it's from a resident. Give the name because that's part of our agreement. Is Angela Parks. I will deal with the matters in the letter when we get to that item.
Okay, thank you. So you all heard the letter there, and we'll deal with that when we get to agenda item number 13, the tree survey. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, Town Mayor's announcements and correspondence. I've got a few things for you. Councillor Claxton's in. Can you turn your microphone off, Councillor Claxton, please? Pleased to announce that the Tower Gardens Pavilion was showcased alongside all the significant projects in the RICS Social Impact Awards yesterday. Whilst we did not win the award, we should be proud that the pavilion reached the national finals and was seen by people across the UK. We've also been advised that the pavilion project will be included in the future NALC publication researched by the Plunkett Foundation as an example to the best practice in the town parish council sector. Secondly, there will be a need to be an extraordinary planning meeting called by the chairman on the 2nd of December. This will be to review a number of planning applications that have come in and cannot wait for the next meeting. Third, the town clerk is arranging a special Zoom meeting with Lydia Ruslin regarding Connected Coast. This idea is for Lydia to brief councillors on the projects rather than just focus on the process and answer the questions that councillors may have. It is proposed that we arrange it for Monday, the 7th of December at 7 p.m. It will not be a formal council meeting and will not be open for public viewing. The informal approach will allow the council a better opportunity to obtain a good insight into the whole scheme and have open discussions. It really is important that the council is aware of the changes and projects being proposed, and they're likely to have significant impact on Skegness. This will be the opportunity for councillors to find out more, to assure themselves that they support the council's vision for the Skegness in the future. And finally, the Christmas lights. I'd like to announce that the Christmas lights on Lumley Road and High Street will be illuminated at 4 p.m. on Saturday, the 28th of November. There is no switch on this year. Okay, thank you. Anything else, you'll find that on the Twitter, Facebook, and the Town Council website, which is updated regular. Sorry about that. Agenda item number 6, schedule of payments for approval. If you can put Councillor Dennis in the waiting room, Town Clerk, or Tim. He's still got his hand up, but I think that was from before. Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, regarding the schedule of payments, there was roughly about £2,000 worth of stock put in the cafe in October. And I was just wondering if they were perishable stocks or whether they've obviously shelf stock. And secondly, regarding the payments, on the list of payments, you've got staff expenses, but then you go over to the far side of it and it says stock and purchases. So I just didn't like, just never wonder what that was, please. Okay.
I can answer both those questions. Firstly, in relation to the stock purchases that came into the cafe prior to lockdown, all of those have either been used in the days leading up to the to the closure. We used up most of the perishable items. Where we couldn't use them and where it was possible to either cook them and freeze them or some other way preserve them, we have done. We're continuing to do freezer checks every day for items that are in the freezers, and that's being done by the office staff and the caretaker. I'll come on to a bit more detail when we get to the report of how we're working under COVID. But so the stock, everything that we could use was used, and virtually everything else. There was very little perishable waste when we went into lockdown. The items that are down as staff expenses, what we found is that several items it's much cheaper to buy them from a supermarket than to buy them from a supplier. Certainly some of the fresh items, we could be paying a quarter of the price that we would do if we bought them through one of the main suppliers. So in those circumstances, what we're doing is we're buying those from some of the local supermarkets and shops, and then staff are paying for them, and then they're getting reimbursed for the cost.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers your question, Adrian, Councillor Finlay. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got a couple of questions, really. I see the ARC payments is approximately about £600. Is that every month that we pay to ARC with various payments, or has it changed? My other question is, I see there's 2 mobile phones down there. One's an IP phone. I'm assuming that's just the same for ARC. Is that another payment for ARC? And the mobile phone for O2 at 57.79. Have we got more than one mobile phone, or have we just got one phone? And is that the best deal we can get on the phones? Thank you. Oh, hang on, I've got another one. Also, the units we rent out. How many units do we rent out? And is there any chance of condensing it so we don't have as many units? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Town Clerk.
I'll deal with the units one first. If you remember, we've just signed a new 3-year lease, which council just approved within the last 6 months, because of the need to store our equipment for cutting the grass. We had a new mower, if you recall, at the beginning of this season, and once the council agreed that we would expand into the additional unit to store that, as soon as it became free, the contract was signed, which was, as I say, several months ago now. In relation to the mobile phones, we have 2 mobile phone units which cover the grounds team, the mobile parts of the grounds team. Clearly, they need to be able to be in contact, health and safety, and sometimes lone working issues there. We will review the mobile phone contracts when they come up for renewal. We need to have enough data and voice. We do use them also to communicate by email to the staff and send information backwards and forwards to them. In relation to the payments to ARC, there's a combination of payments that have gone through. There are IP phones, so the phone charges, there are monthly charges. We pay a fee plus a rate, so it's a much smaller cost than we would have been paying under our old telephone system, and it's also supported us, to be honest, with without those we wouldn't have been able to work through from home during the COVID situation like we can, because we can plug a mobile phone into an IP phone into our router, and it acts exactly the same regardless of where we actually are. So those are the monthly charges for that. The software support will be that is a monthly direct debit.
Does that answer your questions, Councillor Brooks?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton.
Good evening. Just 2 payments I've got a question on. The 6th of the 10th, Tomlinson Building, £2,802.90 construction costs. The building was completed 6 months ago. What are we still making payments for? And also Burdens Group on the 28th of the 10th for £3,834 wood chipper replacement. Now, is this some of the equipment that was stolen from the graveyard, and is this something that we're claiming back on insurance?
Thank you.
The chipper was indeed one of the pieces of equipment that was stolen and has been claimed back with the insurance and paid for through that process. The payment to Tomlinson's was a certain amount was retained after practical completion for works that still hadn't been completed, and this relates to groundworks. All the works now that are being completed are being done under defect, so there are a few of those still going on. But the groundworks now should be completed, and they're actually now coming back to replace some of the plants that died as a result, through the summer. So this is really the end of the payment process now. This isn't extra payments, these are payments that were always within the contract, but we just hadn't made them because they hadn't the works.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Claxton?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, nobody else wishing to speak. Can we bring Councillor Dennis back in the room, please? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7. Councillor questions to the Mayor, none received. Agenda item number 8. Questions to comments from the Lincolnshire Police representatives. We've got Councillor Inspector Barnes and Sergeant Harrison in with us tonight. Councillor Anderson, would you like to ask your questions, please?
Councillor Anderson, you're still muted.
Thank you. Yes, if I can just find it, I've got my papers mixed. If you could read it, Mr. Mayor, for me, please.
No problem. Question number 1. Have the police got a new strategy in place to deal with the high number of hate crimes that are being reported? How are the police going to regain the confidence of victims of these disgusting crimes? That's question number 1. Would you like to answer, please?
Yeah. Thank you for the question, Councillor Anderson. I've looked at the figures, and whilst to put it into some context, we're actually 8 occurrences up on the 12-month period compared to last year. However, we are 5 down on the same reporting month this time last year. So as opposed to 11 last year, we're down to 6. I think I have provided that reassurance on previous meetings in relation to how robustly we do deal with them. And there are those support networks in place in relation to victim links. They are discussed every morning at our management meeting. And I can only, reiterate again, and I think I said it last month, that please, if I've just asked people to come forward, as we do with all crimes, but, we really do deal with these very, very seriously. We have actually had recognition in the past in relation to the way we deal with hate crime, which I'll just allow Sergeant Harrison just to speak briefly about.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Anderson. I'd just like to put some context around the circumstances of dealing with hate crime. I suppose at my level as boots on the ground or an operational frontline officer. If a hate crime is reported, then the dealing officer will meet with the victim and start the evidence gathering process. Now, as part of that evidence gathering process, they will also complete a hate crime risk assessment, which is not connected to the investigation as such. It's a risk assessment to assess the welfare and the needs and the vulnerabilities of said victims. So we can discuss the personal effects that this hate crime may have had on that victim. We can look at what support networks they currently have in place. For example, family, friends, partners, professional support. And we can also discuss additional support that we may be able to point them and signpost them in the right direction. Now, once that hate crime risk assessment has been completed, it must then go to that officer's direct line supervisor, which is usually a sergeant. The sergeant will review that risk assessment. And as a third backstop, that then comes to my team in the neighbourhood policing department. So that I then assess that it's gone through the correct process and the relevant support networks are in place. And there has been an odd time where there could be a learning outcome for a young in-service officer that may not have addressed every single point, and I may be able to have developed that officer to improve next time round. But there is a robust structure in place to make sure that we are dealing with these adequately. And just as, I suppose from my point of view, I'll just give you a good news story that might offer some reassurance to the community. Now, all UK police forces are subject to the government's inspections, which is Her Majesty's Inspectorate Constabularies. And they are tasked with reviewing procedures and processes, looking for good practices, and also looking for areas where police forces can improve their performance. Now, a hate crime I dealt with reasonably recently was dip sampling. So I had no idea that HMIC was going to look at this, because I dealt with this crime in the same way I would have dealt with any other crime. HMIC dip sampled the investigation, and they commended it and complimented it to take forward as a best practice, and they were going to make a recommendation that how we dealt with that crime was implemented across all 43 UK police forces. So there's an awful lot of passionate police officers at our level that will give their absolute all to victims of crime and to the community we serve. So I'm quite confident at my level, as I say, as boots on the ground, as shop floor, that we are doing our level best to keep victims safe and to keep them supported in their time of need. And anybody out there that feels that we can improve, or they have an issue with how something's been dealt with, then we have an open door. Let's have that chat and we can take things forward from there. So that was just a bit of experience from my level as a frontline sergeant in relation to this.
Okay, thank you, Sergeant Allison. Councillor Anderson, would you like to come back on that one?
Yes, thank you.
Clarify for that particular question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would. My question actually, and I'd like to thank the Inspector and the Sergeant for their input, but my question is about a strategy or a new strategy that helps deal with the cultural issues in Skegness regarding hate crimes. That could be racism, that could be LGBT, there could be other cultural issues that hate crimes are revolved around. And it talks about education, that talks about diversity, that talks about a whole host of things. I've heard nothing from the police officers, although I've heard some inputs of other agency work, but that doesn't do anything for the victims. The victims are walking along the streets. The people that have done these horrible, disgusting crimes are walking the streets as well. And, they haven't been punished. The only people that I'm concerned about are the victims who are scarred for the rest of their lives with these disgusting crimes. There needs to be a strategy. There needs to be a change. Thank you.
Thank you. Just recording. The second question: what powers have the police got with businesses that are not using the government guidelines on protecting their employees against COVID-19 and general public?
In relation to the business aspect of the COVID regulations, we do work with and receive reports from the trading standards, who, when they receive reports, they send them on to ourselves to see if we've had experience of complaints in relation to that said business. We then, or the team, will go out and assess that business, and their findings are then fed back to trading standards, who in turn will inform the HSE, who will then take the appropriate powers. Our licensing department are responsible for licensed premises, and they have had across the county a number of good news. I say good news stories. It's not when people are breaching. However, it's been dealt with very robustly. Licenses have gone to hearings for revocation because there has been those breaches. So in relation to powers, it's very much a partner agency approach, so that we're all sharing that information and dealing with it all accordingly. Obviously the virus is taken extremely seriously, and we don't want the breaches to continue. And we very much deal with the 4E approach, which has been publicised in the media.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does, partly. Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'd like to thank the Inspector for her response. With the high incidence of COVID in Skegness and our surrounding parishes of Chapel St Leonard's and Ingermills, which have been above 1,000 when the national rate is 220 odd, and Skegness North, where the area I live in is just above 500 in today's count, and Skegness Town I think is 900, and Skegness South is nearly 500. So the virus is still amongst us. It's quite high, but I want to make sure that people that are working, that businesses that are open, are taking this seriously and actually going with the government guidelines regarding risk assessments, social distancing and wearing protection, and not the finger being pointed at them when this can be lapsed, and then obviously the virus is spreading out when people go home, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've just got, before we're going to fill, I've got Councillor Danny Brooks wishing to speak. I'm not sure that's question 1 or 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now I would just like to thank the Inspector and particularly Sergeant Harrison for the update that he gave to the council through Councillor Finlay regarding the South Parade incident. It was very nice to receive the findings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Richard Cunnington, I do believe that you would like to speak as well. I do believe that you'd like to ask the Inspector and Sergeant a question. Now, I want these writing down normally, but you're not looking for the answer tonight, so feel free to ask your question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank the officers for attending tonight. Just a quick question. I'm not looking for the answer tonight, and I don't expect you'll have it with you. Could you come back to us, please, with the best possible figures broke down to the smallest area possible for the amount of penalty charges, fines, or convictions you've actually given out through the COVID situation? And like I say, if you can just come back to us with it broken down as best as possible, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course we can do that, but as you say, we wouldn't be able to do that now because of the statistical research on the systems.
That's fine, thank you. Well, we're not going to let the question be asked tonight if you couldn't find the answer. There's one thing we don't like to do is put people on the spot because we need accurate information if we're going to get information. So we thank you for that. I'd like to thank you,
appreciate that.
Both for your time and effort and all the information you give. Councillor Saxon's waving his hand. Councillor Saxon.
Yes, I'd just like to say about the figures that's just been quoted by Councillor Anderson. Tonight's figures for the whole LDC are 444. Not the figures that you've given, Councillor Anderson's just given, 500 in area and 400 in that. For the whole of the LDC is 440. That's still very high, but not as high as we took in there. I just thought to make that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm aware. I've been checking the figures. They've been coming down daily from the 500 to 471, and then we're down again. So, which is good news. Hopefully, people will adhere and carry on continuing to work hard, bring these figures down because we're not looking very good for the tier system tomorrow. However, we can work on it and get it down. Councillor Danny Brooks, did you leave your hand up from last time?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
That's no problem. I'd like to thank the Inspector because I don't know if they've got to shoot off. They are busy. I'd like to thank them for the time, Inspector Barnsley and Sergeant Harrison. I'd like to thank you for your time. And if you wish to stay, feel free. But if you've got to go, then thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item number 9, reports from the council representative to the outside bodies attached. The Environmental Agency Lincolnshire Beach Management Scheme, provided by Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, the report just is as it is. It's got all your information in there. And a quick fact that I found out this week was that they've been doing re-nourishment works on our beaches since 1994. But read the report at your leisure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Connected Coast minutes from the meeting on the 16th October 2020. Councillor Ty, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is, you've got it in front of you. We sent it out. There was last week's meeting was cancelled. It's say Lydia is organised a meeting. It'd be good for you all arrive at that meeting and see what's going on. Okay.
Thank you very much. We've got the CCTV statistics for quarter 2, 2020-21, provided by Councillor Trevor Burnham and George Saxon.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Lovely. For the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of councillors have been saying up in council, are we paying, is it worth it, basically? Well, if you look at the figures, we've had 59 arrests. That doesn't mean to say we've had 59 convictions, because some of them court cases are still ongoing. But looking at the figures, obviously October, November, December, which is still this year, them figures haven't come in yet. Unfortunately, the town
Councillor Burnham, sorry, can I just stop you a second?
Yeah.
Can you just, to help us out, your internet's breaking up a little bit. If you'd just like to turn your video screen off, it might help you. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. We've had 59 arrests in the last 4 months, but that doesn't mean to say we've had 59 convictions, because some of them court cases are still ongoing. I do still think we're paying good value for money. 456 incidents, and we've had 59 arrests. That's 59 arrests we wouldn't have had without CCTV. Unfortunately, the town's partnership hasn't met since last January because of COVID, and I'm hoping in the very near future we'll be having a meeting with the police. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Saxon, did you wish to say anything on this? No.
No, nothing to add to Councillor. Thank you very much for his work as well.
Okay, thank you. I thank you all for your reports. Okay, agenda item number 10, reports by district and councillors. Councillor Saxon, can you turn your microphone off, please? Agenda item number 10, reports by district county councillors. Councillor Brooks, East Lindsey District Councillor, to give a verbal report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd just produce a bit of an update of what's been going on just for you all tonight. So firstly, I would just like to say how proud I was to be part of some of the acts of remembrance in the town, which include putting the poppies up in the town's lamppost and also painting the giant poppy in Tower Gardens. It was truly stunning to see, and more importantly, just shows that we will not forget the sacrifices made so we can be here today, and for that I'm thankful. I'm also tremendously thankful for the great work of Councillor Finley in bringing it all together, and also the fellow councillors who helped unite the people of the town in a time when they've never felt so distant. We're now a few weeks into our second lockdown now. Obviously, it's coming to an end, but we don't know if it's going to continue. So I'd really just like to send my well wishes out to our residents and hope that they are coping, because as previously mentioned, people have never been so distant. We've been stuck in our homes, for some people alone. I think I speak for every councillor and we say that we're only a phone call away. I think if it all possible, Mr. Town Clerk, we could get some links to some charities, mental health charities, and we could put them out on our social medias just in case anybody is struggling. I think that'd be quite good. Over the last few weeks, I've had the subject of fireworks come up time and time again, obviously with bonfire night, from residents on the subject that I would like to say that we need to find the right solution to fireworks, in my opinion, because it needs to balance the welfare of animals, and of course they do bring a benefit to the local economy. In March, however, the District Council passed a motion which saw the following points: to actively promote the impact of fireworks and damage on people and animals, to encourage local suppliers to stock quieter fireworks, and to deter the use of sky candles. This week I've received several complaints about North Bracing, complaining of the bland grey colouring, and that it's looking very tired, with some of the shelters, not looking the best, to say it was only painted last year. I've reported these complaints, and obviously I'll keep you all updated to the replies I get. Another issue that I've noticed is very few of the lights on Tower Esplanade, the new lighting columns that went up, seem to be working. Upon contact to East Lindsey, I've been informed that the contractor has experienced some water ingress issues with the in-ground uplighter units due to standing water. This is also in turn causing electrical shorting of the wireless controls. The plan, apparently, is to wait until the redevelopment works begin with the pedestrianisation, and the contractor will carry out the necessary repairs. I'm sure many of you may remember last year when businesses on South Parade were told that they could no longer display advertising boards on the protected railings due to them obviously being grade 2 listed, meaning they must be protected with every effort. So I'm sure you'll share my disappointment when I've seen that East Lindsey have filled the railings with tiny plastic signs. However, I've been assured that all the signs, apart from the social distancing signs, will be removed immediately to help protect these railings for future generations, because obviously they're a significant part of Skegness's history. Finally, I would just like to say thank you to Lincolnshire County Council, who have taken care of several issues that I've reported related to street lights, traffic systems and potholes in a timely and efficient manner, which was very good. So thank you for that. But that's my report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Much appreciated. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 11. The motions. Motion 1. We as a town ask the clerk to explore all avenues and the ability to use the new community hub and venue to hold a wedding, including wedding ceremonies. Background: by undertaking the above, we could generate income and help with budget costs. If we ask the clerk to explore the options and feedback to council no later than January meeting, we could debate his findings and hopefully, if all looks good, start offering this service for the spring. We could use the hall and other buffets created and served by our CAF. If we put together a list of what we are able to offer, this would include the size of a wedding present. We'd have to comply with COVID restrictions, the cost of the hall hire, the cost per head for the buffet, cost for external license bar. We would outsource this. We could even ask to outsource the brass silver band to play on the bandstand. People would have the chance to use the gardens. Children would have the able to play in the park, and scenery for the photos would be great. Proposed by Councillor Cunnington. Anything to say, Councillor Cunnington, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, you've read the motion out. Lovely. Thank you very much. It is what it is. I think we need the options pursuing. We need to look at all the costings, what it's going to cost us to actually get these sorts of licenses, if there are any, to actually hold ceremonies. But we need to be mindful of what it could generate as an income in the future. But we do need prices for all the bits mentioned, really, in the report, in the motion that you've got there.
Okay, thank you. We have a seconder, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm just happy to second it. I think it's a very good idea that Councillor Carrington has put in. It's about income generating for the town, which will offset the council tax if we get a good income stream regarding this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I do believe we've brought this up on previous meetings when we was doing this. We work with the building. Any questions? Councillor Kirk, please. Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just need to check with the town clerk, but I thought this is in our original business plan anyway. And when it was discussed 3 years ago, before we started building the building, it was said that we'd get the building up and running first before we applied to have it as a wedding venue. That's my memory. Steve, Steve, can you correct me on that? But I'm sure that's a conversation we had 3 years ago, and it went into the business plan to use it as a wedding venue. That is why when we were costing up the rooms, we included costing up for wedding hire, among other things.
Lost count.
Mary, it is true that it was an item within the business plan. There were a lot of factors associated with it that we didn't explore at the time, such as alcohol licenses, and also that I think since that was written, there's been changes to the actual ceremony venue. Yeah, how you become nominated as a ceremony venue. So we would need to go back and look at that in a bit more detail. But yes, it was in there, and it is possible to expand on what's already in the business plan to identify whether or not this would be viable at the current time or in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Steve Kirk, and I think that my own view is that once the building has bedded down, so to speak, we should use it as much as possible to get use it in a commercial sense, to get some revenue in, subject to to obviously the what is proposed to be used for, the venue suitability, etc., etc. But I do feel that, particularly given the financial situation the country finds itself in, that it's incumbent upon us to try and generate some income to support our activities, rather than, in a sense, almost depending on the council taxpayers exclusively for our funding. And I think that that's a good idea, and we should explore all avenues in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd just like to say is that I think, this is a great idea. I think once these COVID restrictions have gone, there might be a massive boom in people looking for wedding venues. And I don't think it's an opportunity we want to be missing. So, it's a great idea. Let's get it done.
Thank you. Just before I bring Councillor Anderson back in, I'll bring Councillor Carpenter in, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I agree with the new town hall going forward wedding venue. That'd be very good. We talking here using the bandstand and the kids using the park. Are we talking about shutting the park off to the general public while the wedding's on?
We can find that out in a minute when we bring Councillor Anderson in.
Yeah, in response to Councillor Kirk's saying it was in the business plan and it was discussed 3 years ago. Yes, it was in an informal basis, I understand, because we floated so many ideas for the use of. The motion by Councillor Cunnington tonight is to formally ask for this to happen now. And I hope that councillors can agree for this to happen, because it is important. It's about income generation for our town, or for our assets for the towns, which will offset the amount of income generating for the council taxpayer or the residents of Skegness. So, let's be fair about this. Let's get it done. Let's get it put together. Get the licensing sorted. And as Councillor Brooks has said, when the COVID ceases, hopefully next year, okay, and things get back to some kind of normality, then we're in the position to start letting out for wedding receptions, etc., and get some income generating going on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, can I just answer Councillor Carpenter's question in relation to the gardens? It's not possible,
because it will save me answering it.
You can't close the gardens to the public. There is an area to the side of the building which was in the original plans to be part of, if you like, an addition to the hall, and it is a garden area. Whether I'm doubtful that would be ready for use, certainly in the early part, the first probably 6 to 9 months of 2021, that area, because it's still being reseeded and growing at this moment in time. So it's not yet at a time for use, but that could be something that could be considered future years, I think. But no, you can't close the gardens. So anybody wanting to take, for example, wedding photographs in the gardens would have to do so in amongst, recognising it is a public place.
Thank you, Town Clerk. Councillor Edgington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to comment that Councillor Carpenter's contribution was reminded us that there are some potential difficulties. I mean, if you go to any other public venue to have a private venue, sorry, to have a host a wedding reception. And generally speaking, because obviously there's a cost to the couple and those people providing the money, an area set aside specifically for their use. And as the clerk has pointed out, it could be a bit problematic unless we've got that area of land that you've just identified. So, you know, there is a bit of a potential there if you've got members of the public just mingling with guests and possibly taking advantage of any sort of entertainment that may be laid on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dan Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to say on the offset, I do support this and would happily propose that we adopt the motion and get the balls rolling. Just another point of view, however, we would technically be using public finance to be directly competing with a very small group of organisations and, organisations that hire lots of people. We have to be very mindful that we're not, undercutting costs and we are going to be directly competing with some companies that employ many people in Skegness, and we have to be mindful that we're using public money in order to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this motion 100%. It's a fantastic idea. And the worry about children playing in the playground and people in the park and all that, I think that will give people who are having a wedding a bit of charm for the photographs and a great memory for them, basically. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just before I bring Councillor Cunnington in, I'll just bring Councillor Carpenter in, just in case there's another question.
No, it's all right, Mr. Mayor. I ain't put my hand down.
No, Councillor Dankirk,
Okay.
still got your hand up, and Councillor Brooks has. Okay, well, we've got a proposer and a seconder. So we'll go to Councillor Cunnington. Would you like to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the motion is what it is. It's for the clerk to go away to sort out all these ideas, get the information and come back to us. I understand that it's a public area, it is a park, but we're offering people a service. The service is there. It's up to them to choose if they want to accept that. If they want a private garden with a nice building and a pub and everything else, things that we can't offer, then that's their choice. All we're doing is offering the choice to the people to let them make their own mind up. They will be aware of what we have. They'll be aware of what we can offer. And it's down to them then to choose whether to actually accept that offer or go elsewhere. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. It's just literally putting the offer there. This is what we could provide if you're willing to accept it, or if you would like to take that sort of option. The children can play in the park freely. They've got all the gardens to run around. They can have a football. All we've got to do is allocate an area, which we've got the bandstand for the band, if people would like that at their own cost. Just allocate the area for an outside licensed bar that deal with their own licensing and everything else. All we've got to do is offer the space for it. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, we'll go to the vote because, as we said, before this council was formed, the previous council did have this in the plan. So can we all go to the vote, please, with your virtual hands? That's carried. Thank you. Motion 2, proposer Councillor Anderson. Would you like me to read it out, Councillor Anderson? Have you got?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Just in case you've not got your paperwork sorted out yet. Motion 2 then for Councillor Anderson, proposer. Skegness Town Council are extremely disappointed and concerned with the statements made on Lucknow by Lincolnshire County Councillors Colin Davey and Councillor Martin Hill regarding the extending the holiday season for caravan parks to January the 5th by ELDC if they wish to. Many Skegness residents work in the hospitality industry in Skegness, which is the largest industry, and it has been hit the hardest with the government lockdown and restrictions in tackling coronavirus, meaning that residents working in this sector, they've had huge pay reductions of 20% if they are furloughed or more if they are unemployed. To which our local economy is huge, not only in the hospitality and tourism sector, but all sectors has less money circulating in our town for all businesses and residents alike. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First and foremost, can I just say that this motion was actually put together before the lockdown, the national lockdown came into being, and also before the numbers rose to what they are today of virus in the town. Councillor Brooks and I spoke last night whether we would want to withdraw it, but I felt at the time that this motion, I felt so strongly about it, needed still to stand for next year. So I'm talking about 21 and 22, because obviously because of high COVID, that obviously the parks aren't opening, and where we will stand when the new tier system is announced tomorrow. But I think this motion is important because I understand that the East Lindsey LDO, whatever they call it, is for 2 years. So I think these kind of remarks about hitting our local economy by county councillors is, I think it just baffles me. I looked through the revenue and capital budget of Lincolnshire County Council earlier on today, and went through it, and I looked up, Mr. Mayor, and you know, when I see that you know what is being spent in Skegness over the past 10 years amounts to something in the region of £10 million. That means approximately £1 million a year spent on capital and revenue by Lincolnshire County Council. That's excluding the money that they get for highway repairs, etc., which is different. Then I just feel that when you have a portfolio holder for economic developments making comments like this, and a leader of the council who's not even investing in Skegness, when we have such deprivation and such poverty around us. And I just feel that we as town councillors need to stand up and say, hey, you know, if you're going to make these remarks, then you've got to actually invest in our town. And that ain't happening. And that's why this motion is what is before us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree. And I think at the last council meeting, a lot of councillors expressed their views on that issue as well. We was all weren't happy about seeing that report. Councillor Trevor Burnham, you've got your hand up. Is it from the voting?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
It's okay. Councillor Cunnington?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think we'll...
Councillor Burnham, you've got your microphone on. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with the motion. I think we ought to take it to the vote. It is what it is. It says what it says. And I'd like to thank Councillor Anderson for bringing the motion to us.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Mayor, it's normal protocol for the seconder to speak before comments are made, because an item isn't actually an item until it's been proposed and seconded.
Okay, sorry, Town Clerk. Just watching these hands ping up and down. Councillor Brooks is the seconder. Councillor Brooks, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, like Councillor Anderson said, we spoke about it yesterday, and we decided to leave it on. When we wrote the motion, the situation has moved on since then. However, Councillor Davey and Councillor Hill, to put our town down, we need our leaders to be supporting us, to be shouting at the government for help and to be invested in. You've got Andy Burnham across the country. Everyone's looking at him going, wow, he's done a great job for his city. Our guys are just kicking us while we're down. We need them to take a lesson from Andy Burnham and start shouting for what this town needs. That's why we continue with the motion, not over this year, same as Councillor Anderson says. We've got 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and forever. We need leaders that are supporting us, not kicking us when we're possibly down.
Thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree with what's been said. It feels like sometimes these people don't want this town to win. They don't want to see this town prosper. And it is, you know, it's horrible to see. So, yeah, absolutely fully support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree. Extremely disappointing. And I've had those conversations with the councillors mentioned. It wasn't an attack on the coast. It wasn't an attack on our residents. It was an attack, a direct attack on East Lindsey District Council, because we actually got off our backsides and tried to do something to help the economy. So, yeah, it was a direct attack on the council and what we were trying to do in driving forward, extending the season. Very, very disappointing. in fairness to Councillor Davey, when I challenged him on this, he did say, well, he'd said a lot of other things as well, and as is usually the way, Look North had carved it up to say what they would say. Well, whether that is the case or not, I still think you should say those things in public that can then be carved up. So very, very disappointing. But yeah, the District Council will continue to work with the major players along the coast and try and put something in place so the caravan parks can stay open and our residents can stay in employment. It's as simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. I'm very disappointed as well with it. Being on ELDC myself, it might be an attack on East Lindsey, but surely you don't do that when you're on ELDC yourself. You should be supporting it, but that's my view. Okay, we've got a proposal and a seconder. You know what we're voting for, so we'll go to the vote then, please. Thank you. It's carried. Put your hands down. Okay, motion 3 by Councillor Anderson. Would you like me to read it again for you? Skegness Town Council is extremely concerned to protect services at Skegness Hospital. Following the temporary removal of urgent care facilities overnight until March 2021, there is now speculation that consultant-led outpatient services for surgical orthopaedics, orthopodology, respiratory cardiology, podiatry and visual fields are also to be withdrawn. The council appreciates that the COVID-19 pandemic is stretching NHS services, but the impact of such withdrawal of the services from Skegness would have similar far-reaching consequences to both physical and mental well-being of Skegness residents of the short-term impact of COVID. Can UALHT confirm if it does intend to withdraw some of all the outpatient services from Skegness Hospital? If it does, then can it please provide details of the recovery plan it will put into place to manage the consequential long-term impact on the health and well-being of Skegness residents? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I reserve my right to speak at the end of the debate if there is a debate, and hopefully everyone can support this? I think it is important that I have been in contact with Councillor Macy, who's the chair of the Health Scrutiny Committee, and he tells me that there has been meetings with the Community Health Trust and also United Lincolnshire Hospitals regarding services at Skegness Hospital. When it was confirmed about my previous motion about the opening of the urgent care centre and also the delivery of services to Skegness Hospital by United Lincolnshire Hospitals. I think I really am concerned about this, Mr. Mayor. In the middle of a pandemic, that we are seeing our services being withdrawn, and I just cannot understand why you've got consultant-led services at Skegness Hospital where you have vulnerable elderly people attending these services and asking them to travel all over Lincolnshire for clinical or for services that they need, which can be done locally. I'll leave it for there, but I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a second. Councillor Adrian Finlay, please.
Yeah, totally support the idea, but I think we need to contact them sooner rather than later, because obviously the longer we leave it, the longer we leave it, there's more of a possibility they could be cutting these services. Now, if they are cutting these services, I think we should be in a position to say, well, hang on a minute, like Councillor Anderson says, there's a lot of vulnerable people, like the elderly. If they have to travel, can they afford to travel? Are they in a position to travel? Are they medically fit to travel? And with this global pandemic, are they safe to travel? Then you've got the younger people. People are going to have to find more time to take off to travel. It's just ridiculous if they are going to remove these services, and just removing them alone without putting them back at a later date. For Skegness, there's 22,000 people in Skegness. We don't know the percentage of how many people use those services, but in the summer, the population of Skegness can double. Now, I know Louth's got a population of 17,000, but are they removing their services? Because it would be ridiculous to remove 22,000 people in Skegness, remove those services, and then leave Louth's open when in the summer we double our population. So, yeah, fully support the idea and totally agree with everything Anderson says.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to ask Councillor Anderson, prior to the motion being passed, we received an email last night from our deputy clerk, and we received the links again this morning, which I actually listened to via my computer and stuff. And within that link, there was a section there which actually reinforced this motion, saying about the transport to the nearest hospital. I'd like to know if Councillor Anderson would include that information from that link with the motion, because it's something they're readily available, and it was a professional link to the article, which I think supports this motion.
Sorry, Councillor Cunnington. Sorry, you're breaking up. Councillor Saxon, you've got your microphone on. We can't hear that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You just can't hear anything at the minute. Can you mute it? Help him mute it, Town Clerk, please. Councillor Cunnington, sorry, I couldn't hear.
No, thank you, Mr. Mather. Yeah, so there was an article this morning we got from the Deputy Clerk, which reinforced the support needed for this motion. I'd just like to know if Councillor Anderson would be prepared to add parts of that link to the motion. I know it may have to be rewritten or whatever. I'm fully supportive of the motion, but I think that supports it and reinforces what he's looking for. Thank you.
Councillor Saxon, you wishing to say something, please?
Please, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you? Right. There's a lot of things not right in these reports coming from the hospital. There's been consultants there for 3-4 months now at all. No consultants at all. That includes the day and the after hours. Also, the doctor on the other side, there were the 2 doctors for Scarborough and Gloucester have been removed, probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, because they said they weren't needed, but they've gone to Louth. So you know what happened in Grantham. It's just not true what people are saying. If you look at this week, it's not in a by the standard, but this week, the scrutiny committee at the LCC, one of the counties, I mean, this is how this, it'd been to the Skegness hospital, it found it was very busy. Well, what are you going to do? Yeah, when he left, there might have been people coming in, and there might have been before him. I mean, what is to say? I've got a chairman here who's got the Health Scrutiny Committee. And
breaking up, Councillor Saxon. Maybe you'd like to turn your video off. It might help. I don't know whether it's coming through unclear for everybody else. Just try and turn your video.
Is it not coming through?
The voice isn't. If you turn your video off the screen and see if that helps you. I'm sure it's the same for the councillors. Okay, thank you. Carry on.
Right, yeah. We've also got the chairman of the Health Scrutiny Committee in Skegness here. No comment for him, if there was. The paper didn't report it. But this is very, very important. It's serious. It's going to happen if we don't put up a fight now. They're talking about bringing it back in March, but you know it's been promises before. The chairman, not the chairman, one of the councillors did say from the authority that there was no plans to close Skegness Hospital. Well, that covers a multitude of sins, doesn't it? And I think we ought to be, aware that this could happen, and we don't want it to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jimmy Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be honest, it beggars belief that they may be intended to withdraw some services, or if not in the process already. With new houses in the pipeline for the area, as well as extending the season, surely we should be putting services in, not taking them out. Thank you.
Seem to have lost Councillor Brooks. Councillor Steve Kirk, are you there? I don't know whether it's my connection or.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, can I just say, yes, there's no way that we can afford to lose anything from Skegness. I totally agree with Jimmy. The contrary should be the case. As we mentioned when we were talking about the town's funds 2 meetings ago, when Skegness Gateway and 800 extra homes, I took out the challenge. That's all well and good, but where do they go when they need to see a doctor? You can't get a doctor's appointment in Skegness. You struggle to get a dentist appointment, and now there's a possibility or a speculation that you could struggle to go to the local hospital. So yes, we most certainly should object in the strongest terms to any reduction in service. I would question though whether the motion is quite worded correctly, because I can't actually see an action there. So can I suggest, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Finlay, in your bottom paragraph, you write there's something similar to that this council writes to ULHT to confirm it does not intend to, because at the minute there isn't an action for the council to do. So it just becomes a pointless statement unless we have that action in there. I'm sure it's just an oversight.
Okay, just before I bring Councillor Anderson in, would you like to come back, Councillor Jimmy Brooks, please? Because we did break up there. I don't know whether it was mine or, but I think did everybody lose the connection?
Yeah. Did you not get my
I got a part of it, and then it all just broke up, and you disappeared. Everybody else was moving.
That's fine. I'll say it again. Yeah, it basically beggars belief that they may be intending to remove services, or if not already doing so. With new houses in the pipeline for the area and extending the season, surely we should put in services in, not taking them out. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Finlay. Councillor Saxon, hang on, sorry. Councillor Saxon, you got your microphone on still. Councillor Finlay, okay.
Yeah, I did say that I think we need to contact them sooner rather than later to get immediate response. You know, requesting whether they intend to close the services, and at least that way it gives us a chance. I think the longer we leave it, the longer, the more chance of us of losing those services if they are going to remove them services.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Kirk, for correcting me.
Councillor Kirk wanted to add, so you got some more wording in the bottom there. Are you happy with that, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Finlay and I had talked about that previously, and he was going to come in with that amendment, which he has quite clearly stated. Can I just say, during the debate, and I think we've got everyone's agreement that the motion should go forward with the amendments, as what Councillor Finlay has suggested, that we contact United Lincolnshire Hospital straight away to organise a meeting, so they can, or we can ask them questions on what they think is going to happen in Skegness. And you know, Skegness Hospital, ever since I've been a councillor, I took a delegation back in, I think it was 95, 96, when they tried to close the A&E facility down, and we led a delegation to London. I think Councillor Saxon was with me at that time. And we had 2 coaches go down to the Houses of Parliament, and with a huge petition to the Health Minister then, I think his name was Stephen Dorrell, who was the Health Minister there, and they changed their minds because there was uproar. I think that petition was raised 19,000, if I remember rightly, within 3 weeks. That's how what people think about Skegness Hospital at that time. It really is cruel in the middle of a pandemic when we got such high infection rates that they're seriously thinking of withdrawing services, as what Councillor Finlay says, making vulnerable people. You know, I heard of a 92-year-old resident having to travel to Louth to have some services the other day. 92, because services have been withdrawn from Skegness in the middle of a pandemic. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable, the thinking behind this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just before we go to the vote with the amendment, I've got Councillor Saxon waving his hand. If you'd like to come back in, Councillor Saxon, before we go to the vote, please. Councillor Saxon.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Good.
Yeah.
Name you need to actor is John Turner. He's in charge of the whole shebang. He used to come to hospital, watch meetings when we asked him, but he's most evasive. So no sense out of him. But the thing is, now when we saved Scarborough Ward and Gloucester Ward, we marched and we got the result, as Councillor Anderson said. But to leave Skegness, especially in the summer or from spring, with the elderly, what happened to the golden hour rule? You know, for a heart attack, you can't get an ambulance in an hour, and now this is going to make it even worse. At least they're the ECG here. We really need to move, and as you can probably tell, it's passionate with me, and I can't sit back and let it go. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's passionate with everybody, with the sounds of it. Councillor Cunnington, before we, and I've got Councillor Finley with his hand up if he still wants to ask a question, but Councillor Cunnington, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if Councillor Anderson actually took on board my comments from the beginning, and whether he would like to look back to today's link and add a piece, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Finley?
Yeah, with the amendment, I'd just like to see if the town clerk's okay and he's clear of obviously what we're asking for and voting for.
Yeah, well, we've just got probably one more amendment here if Councillor Anderson agrees to it.
Mayor,
Sorry,
a couple of points. Firstly, on Councillor Cunnington's remark about, bear in mind the general public who are watching this won't know what any of that is about because they didn't receive the links that were sent out in relation to the transport information. And I suspect that at least some councillors won't be aware of that, and therefore it's putting them in an unfair position to vote on an amendment that they haven't got knowledge and details of, and weren't expecting to include tonight. So I don't think legitimately that can be included in the vote tonight. In respect of the actual motion, I understand that we do need to write to them urgently. There seem to be mention of a meeting there as well. What I would say is if you introduce the concept of a meeting, the likelihood is that you will delay any response by at least weeks, if not months. It took me a month to get a response to the previous motion on Skegness Hospital, and that was a fairly straightforward, letter. Trying to arrange a meeting so that you can question them on this, I would say that you...
Sorry, Town Clerk. Councillor Saxon, can you turn your microphone off, please? I can't. It's not off, it's on.
I'm sure
it's still on. I can't hear a word what the Town Clerk's saying now. Thank you. Carry on.
Yes. So if you try and arrange a meeting now, I think you're looking at months and months and months before you actually would potentially get anybody to join a meeting to answer questions. If for those members that were here a few years ago when we had representatives from the the chief executive of the local health trust down, that took months to organise, and it took weeks in advance to ensure that we had the questions that that actually made sure that they answered the questions that you wanted to. We prepared those a long time in advance. So I think in terms of getting a response, if it's urgent, that it should be a letter on the terms that are within the motion as written, if you want a quick response.
So, okay, Councillor Cunnington, you understand that one? Yes, he's nodded.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Did you want to say something, Councillor Cunnington?
No, Matt, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just got a bit of a delay. Okay, so you're okay with that motion as it stands in, Councillor Anderson?
Yes, with the amendment, we write to the trust straight away. I'd like to pose a question, and hopefully Councillor Finley can come in, Mr. Mayor. Can we ask our MP, therefore, in view of what the town clerk has said, to facilitate a meeting between us and the chief executive and the chairman of United Lincolnshire Hospital Trust as a matter of urgency regarding our concern about what's happening at Skegness Hospital. Say, another letter to the MP facilitating that. And I hope Councillor Finlay will agree. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Finlay?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't affect the motion, then I'm fine with it. Obviously, we don't want to delay anything regarding the letter, so I'm fine with it as long as it doesn't delay anything.
Okay, we've got Councillor Saxon. We've had it proposed and seconded. Can we move on with this item?
We've just listened to what the town clerk said, and he said to send a letter first before you introduce people about getting a meeting. He's quite right. It should be, you should send a letter and wait until we get a reply to that letter marked urgent before we see the MP and he wants to go to everybody in a bit, because like he says, that'll delay it for 6 months.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had the amendment. Yes, thank you. We've had the amendment, so we all know what we're voting for. We've got the proposer and the seconder. All happy? So all in favour, please show. Okay, that's carried. Okay, motion number 4. Councillor Billy Brooks, would you like me to read this one out, or would you like to do this one?
You can read it, Mr. Mayor, if we come back after you've read it.
So it's carried. Just before we move, I've got Councillor Danny Brooks with his hand up. It's probably from the vote.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was just reading what Councillor Hills wrote on BBC Radio Lincolnshire, wrote to the Secretary of State, asking East Lindsey and Boston to be separately graded in the tier system. But anyway, that's another debate.
I read that earlier. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Councillor Billy Brooks.
Yeah, if you could read the motion, please, Mr. Mayor, then I'll come back after that. Thank you.
No problem. I've been kind to you all tonight. The motion then. The motion is that the council are to apply for my councillor community grant to allow Christmas tree and decoration to be put up in the Tower Gardens. The reason I have decided this would be a worthy spend of the grant, and then in a time where people aren't going to have a normal Christmas and have never been further apart. It is hoped that this will help bring the community together and hopefully make this dreadful time easier. The details of the proposals are to be delegated to the town clerk to action to enable the tree to be put up in time for Christmas. That's proposed by Councillor Billy Brooks. Would you like to have your say, Billy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it really comes from the poppy that was painted on the grass in Tower Gardens, and seeing the way that the community came together. I mean, it had thousands and thousands of shares all over social media. You know, you sat in the garden for an hour and people were coming out safely, a safe outdoor space to sit around and reflect. And, you know, it was just nice to see. It sort of brought people together. So that's the hope with this this tree, that, you know, use the community grant to help, obviously, because there's not a lot other things that can happen at the moment. So it's an idea to hopefully bring the community together, you know, at a tough time. So that's the hope.
Lovely, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Adrian Finlay. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor Finlay?
Yeah, I mean, we have spoke to the town clerk. We got on a couple of positions for it, but it is possible. It is doable. They do it all over the world, all over the country. Put Christmas trees in parks and streets and different places. So why not in Skegness? I know obviously it's not quite a normal year, but I think it's a beautiful space. And when it's lit up at night, it's a peaceful space. And what better way to show it off than a Christmas tree presented to them? So for me, it's a brilliant idea.
Good, and I think it was great to see. I fully support this, and I think it's great to see how we wanted to move forward with this. As we've talked of plans for Christmases over the years, it's not to take anything from anywhere else, it's to enhance the town. Councillor Mark Anderson, please.
Thank you. I fully support this idea. I think it's a brilliant initiative, and well done to Councillor Brooks for using his community grant for this purpose. I think it's a brilliant idea. Fully support it.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, fully support it. And I'd just like to add that if we're running out of funds from Councillor Billy Brooks, I still have some district councillor community grant as well, which I'd be more than happy to finish off with. I've got £500 left, if that's any good to him.
Good, thank you. I've also got some Councillor Brooks. Councillor
Mayor.
Tony Ty. Sorry, Town Clerk.
I just wanted to bring into question, whilst I think lots of people and myself think yeah, excellent idea, and we've been talking in the offices have been talking about how we could light up the building and also the gardens and Christmas trees. My only concern here is the timeliness of the grant. 3 weeks ago, I think it was, maybe 4 now, and there was an application for grant in relation to another project that we're doing, and that's still in process. We haven't yet got confirmation of whether or not the grant is going to be given or not. And when we chased it, we didn't really get a conclusive answer, other than questions maybe raised with the councillors concerned. So my concern here is that we're only a few weeks away from Christmas. If it takes 4 weeks for the actual to be processed, we'll be into New Year. The council can't pay for it itself, because it doesn't have the funds to do that, and secondly, that is what we have to declare on the actual form, that it wouldn't otherwise be funded. So there's a bit of a rock and hard place as to how this can be moved forward if the grant doesn't go through in a very timely way, and by that I mean within sort of days rather than weeks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Billy Brooks, would you like to come back with that one?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the grants I've done in the past, I've never, it's never took that length of time. And it's usually, once you get, usually the problem is getting the forms signed, and once they're in, it's usually within a week. I've known it going. So it's something that, if we get it in as quick as we can. I mean, if we don't get it, we don't get it. But there's no, well, if we don't try at all, we will definitely have no tree. So the way I see it is, we'll give it a go, and hopefully it will come through quickly. I can't see it being a problem. I've spoke to East Lindsey about it, and they said, can't see any problems with it. So all we can do is hope, but I'll chase them up and we'll do our best to get it through. That's all we can do.
Thank you, Councillor Billy Brooks. Councillor Sid Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to the town clerk. Has this been costed? Do we know what sort of money we're talking about?
I haven't yet costed the full project.
Councillor Dennis, did you want to come back?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saxon, you've got your hand up on the virtual screen. I don't know if you wanted to speak.
Found it by accident. I can't get back. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think really a lot of the garden centres would really come forward to donate the tree. So I don't think the tree problem, will be a cost problem. But of course, there's all the other things to it, the lights and then the supervision or whatever. But I think that will be the case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got the motion in front of us. Just before we bring Councillor Finlay back, we've got the motion in front of us. The sooner, if we're all in support of this, to get this moving, and Councillor Billy Brooks chase it through right to the end and see what we can achieve for the town. I think it's a good idea to bring people together. We need to be in a happier place. So I fully support this. Councillor Saxon, you still got your microphone on, just before I bring Councillor Finlay in. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, myself and Billy have looked at a variety of trees on quick release, quick delivery. Now they've opened up Christmas trees for sale again. We've looked at a variety of safe lighting to suit town clerk's requirements. We've got the power sockets. We've pretty much got everything in place, and the decorations. And fixing the tree so it's secure. So we pretty much know what we're doing. We just need to know if we can get one, we can get the money, and then 2, get the go ahead from town clerk. Thank you.
So thank you. We're going to go to the vote then, because I think it's a good idea. I think we've got a lot of support here. The sooner we get moving on this, the sooner we can try and get a tree in our gardens that we've been proud of. And I think it's a way forward. So all to the vote, please. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, if you'd like to lower your hands. Okay, moving on to the agenda item number 12, draft budget for 21-22. Report and appendices attached to prove an update to the 21-22 draft budget position for the council. To use this and the basis for the precept setting meeting in January, or alternatively for council to guide the town clerk as to changes they wish to make.
Mayor, at the last meeting, you asked me to take forward the medium risk option and then to look at further reductions in the budget that didn't adversely affect services. So I've gone through it and I've spent quite a bit of time, as other officers have as well, to try and get to a point where we could present the lowest possible increase that meets those requirements. So if you recall, the council agreed that it should transfer, close the cemetery reserve and transfer the £60,000 into general reserves. I can inform you now that the rate, we now have the rateable value for the pavilion, and the first set of business rates have now been billed. And that's come out quite a bit lower than we had in the original estimate, which is as good. And it means that overall the cost of the pavilion is very much in line with those original estimates that we did prior to build. In order to get the cost down further, I've looked at the pay award and reduced that down to 1.5%. And given the Chancellor's announcement today about public sector pay restraint, I think that's probably now a sensible level. The overtime budget has been significantly reduced, but that will mean less flexibility for the grounds team. So if incidents come along, I mean, for example, we have been carrying out some clearing the pigeon mess outside of between Tower Gardens and Lumley Road, that area there with the shelter. That's been done in overtime hours, and there are one or two other tasks that typically get done in overtime, but it may mean that those now either can't be done or we have to delay other work or not do other work in order to fit everything in. I've made the assumption that the employees' NI and pensions contributions won't increase. If they do, then there will be an overspend on that, but that's a risk that council can obviously take. The car mileage budget has been reduced slightly. Staff training budget has been reduced, but will be reinstated over the following years. Staff training is an important thing to make sure that we keep up to date with all good practice and current regulations, but so trimming it in 1 year and then building it back over the following years is how I've set that out. The subscriptions, some of the smaller ones to be removed, CELTA, which there hasn't been meetings of CELTA now for a couple of years, so I'm not sure the value that we're getting from them. And the Federation of Cemetery and Crematoria, I think, is one that we can probably sacrifice in preference to perhaps the National Association of Memorial Masons, that give us a lot of technical guidance and advice. The community grants budget has been reduced, but if council want to do that, I would suggest that the maximum grant is reduced from £1,000 to 500, and that the policy is updated accordingly. We could, as we've seen, there are district councillor grants that we could point organisations that contact us towards, and that might be a more suitable sort of grant funding for them. The civic events budget that pays for mayor making and the civic church service, I've removed those from the figures. Few councils now have publicly funded events such as this. Many have reduced, taking those out over the past years in order that it's not a burden on the ratepayer. The Tower Gardens repairs budget has been reduced for 1 year and then built back in the following 2 years. This may mean that the less urgent repairs are delayed, so we may have to push those back into future years, make things last a bit longer effectively. The contribution to the car park surface repair and White Line Fund has been removed for 1 year. Car parks in reasonable condition, albeit there does tend to be some standing water in heavy rain, but that might be a drainage issue. The play area repair budget has been reduced for 1 year. That would have the consequence that if things go wrong, we may need to close or remove an item of equipment or delay getting it repaired. The public property contingency has been reduced slightly, so that will reduce future funds for replacement and repair, and again may cause delays to those repairs if there are insufficient budget available. And the general reserve, as council wanted at the last time, been increased £60,000, and then future years will need to be increased to keep pace with the expenditure budget to maintain it at that minimum level. So as a result of all of those changes, the preset would have to be 551,284, which for a band D property would represent, based on the current tax base, represent a 10.69% increase. There's then future predictions. I'm a bit wary of those now, but we're looking at somewhere 3 to 4%. But of course, it does depend on things like, does the vaccine, reduce the pandemic, and do we get back to normal life? If that's the case, then I think we can be probably a little bit more confident of those figures. But of course, other things may happen as they have done this year that we didn't plan. So it doesn't include any business plan items at this moment, so there's no growth in there. And certainly we can look at the business plan where there's not cost implications, which generally tend to be things like changes of policy or procedure. And then any future growth may have to be delayed by a year, looking into 22-23. Assuming that the tax base remains unchanged, the impact on a band D property is £9.30 per year or 18 pence per week. And for a band A property, the increase is £6.23 per year, 12p per week. If the tax base changes, the total precept rise would remain the same, but the impact on our households could change. So if the tax base increases, then the impact on individual householders would be a smaller amount. However, if it goes the other way and the tax base decreases, then the impact might be slightly higher. Having gone through those, I really don't think there's any more scope within the budget to reduce it any further unless you make cuts to services. I had put forward some, and those went round by email, but I think most councillors seem to feel that they weren't ones that they wanted to adopt. So things like the Christmas lighting, the contracts up for renewal, it would be possible to scale back or remove without penalty, but that didn't seem to be something the council wanted to adopt. If you're not minded to go forward with this level of increase, then we really need to move fairly quickly now, because we've not got many weeks left until the precept has to be decided by law, and that means that if you want to cut further, we're going to have to do quite a bit of work to understand the implications of reducing services, and that could include things like redundancy payments, which could increase costs, but so in the short term. So the paper's in front of you. If you're minded to move ahead with this, then I will pull together all of the information ready for the January meeting. If we get the tax base before the December meeting, then I can bring it back and let you know what the impact is. But based on the information I've had from East Lindsey, I'm not actually expecting the tax base information to come in until just before Christmas. So it's probably too late for that meeting.
Thank you for your report, Town Clerk. Councillor Jimmy Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the clerk and all the office staff again for producing this document again. Isn't it a few times? I've got just a little concern. Within 5 years, we'll be paying over £400,000 in employees' cost, which is, considering the income, is a bit of a concern for me. But my question is, we've got 10.69 for this year, 3.99, 3.45, 3.68. I understand it's only a forecast estimate. But if you add all them together and average them out, you come to 5.45. Is there any way that we could get it all down to 5.45 for the whole 4 years using the reserves and then just averaging it out of that? Thank you.
Town Clerk?
Well, I referred to the previous meetings where, we haven't got, although the reserves may look to be, reasonable sums of money, in terms of actual good practice for town and parish councils, we are right at the bottom level of general reserve funds, and if anything we need to build those up. And the fact that we've just had a pandemic which has reduced our income, an impact on our expenditure, means that we need to be prepared for those things in the future. This is one example of something that can go wrong, and that's what the general reserve is there as an emergency savings account to bail us out. But of course you need to put that money straight back in order to ensure that if you have the same thing the following year, you're not left in a position where you haven't got sufficient funds to operate. In respect of the staffing costs, it's not surprising that the staffing costs are the largest costs. It's the staff that actually make the services happen. And that's the same in any local authority. You will find that the staffing costs are one of the, if not the largest costs, then certainly one of the largest costs. The alternative is, you still have to pay for services, whether they're internally done, externally done, if you want the services to run. If council wants to reduce costs in the future, the only solution, I'm telling you this now, I've been through these figures that many times, there is no alternative but to cut services if you want to cut costs. To be honest, 3.5% to 4% is very difficult. It is very difficult to predict accurately at that level. We're talking about a few pounds here and there can make, a difference of, in those figures. So if we get inflation of 2 or 3%, and we don't know what's going to happen with inflation in the future, post COVID, if unemployment rises, if there could be an economic boom as people spend money that they have previously not spent. We don't know what the impact of unemployment is going to be, whether that will reduce expenditure. There's so many uncertainties that predicting these figures that's why I said I don't really like putting them in. They are at this stage a guesstimate. As our assets become older, generally speaking, there needs to be, there's more repairs to do. So at the moment, the new building, for example, we've kept the figures for repairs low there, but there will be, as time goes by, there will be things that need to be done to it. Similarly, as I said in some of the descriptions that I've given, we've pulled back on some of the budgets, and that's pushed some of the work into the future. And so we're building back those budgets so that we can then do that work. So hence, that's why you've got those sort of higher than inflation figures, because you're building back budgets that you've taken out this year in order to get it down to the figure that I've got it to. So I don't see. I mean, at the end of the day, it's completely council's decision to decide what services it wants to provide. All I can do is cost them to the best of my ability with the information I have. But anything beyond next year is pure speculation and guesswork at this moment in time.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Kerr.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, the 10.69 is certainly a lot better than the 30% was that we looked at a few months ago. And I am quietly confident now that the town clerk has sharpened his pencil that much, you need a microscope to see its point. I think he's done an excellent job. I have one question, and it's just a question about IT provision. We have a budget line for IT equipment standing at 1,500. And also a general reserve for IT equipment as well. Can the town clerk just clarify that whilst they have a similar budget heading, they are actually for different options? And all I'd say to my colleagues is, looking forward to 3.99, the 3.45 and the 3.68, is this council doing nothing? This council is still working on the last council's business plan. This council hasn't got a business plan of stuff it wants to do. And when it comes forward with the ideas of stuff it wants to do, somebody will have to pay for those if there's a cost implication. So whilst it'd be nice to be able to predict the 3.99 and 3.45, for example, we've just agreed that we're going to look at weddings. Well, the last time I looked for Church Farm, the fee was £1,000 up front to be considered to be a wedding venue. So we need to have some money in our budget. We've screwed it down as far as we can, and I'm quite happy that the town clerk has done this job. The only comments I ever get in relation to services the town provides are positive ones. The quality of the cemetery, the quality of the grass cutting, the quality of the park. And that's because we have staff that we pay to do that. I wouldn't be happy to be, as a town councillor, to cut those services. Go back to the olden days when county council cut our grass, where it got cut once, the grass was left all over the place, and you wouldn't see them again for another 9 months, and it was nearly a foot high. That standard of service. Tower gardens that was full of litter, that didn't have any flowers in the flower beds, where the grass had big bald patches in. And as a cemetery service, it was run by somebody else, which was of questionable standards. We were constantly getting bills for paving slabs that would become unlevel because it had been chucked down badly rather than the quality work that our team do. So whilst I said at the outset I would like to see this budget brought down to the round about the 6, 7, 8%, I am confident that the town clerk has had enough time now to adjust these figures as much as he can. And if he's telling us now that 10.69 is where it needs to be before we actually start losing services and going backwards and taking our town backwards, then I'll be happy to support this 10.69%.
Thank you, Councillor Kirk. Councillor Mark Anderson, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I concur with Councillor Kirk? For the extra £10 which I will pay for a Band D property, I'm happy enough to pay that because of, you know, what I see in front of me. It is what I get in a good service, as what Councillor Kirk has just stated. Where I do feel angry is when I have to pay, which is proposed by Lincolnshire County Council, which I'll use them as an example, will be a 5% increase in my council tax. And all of the services I see or use from Lincolnshire County Council is street lights, which I probably get 6 hours on average per year, street lights, and potholes galore on the roads that I use. That's when I get angry, when there's no investment in my town, and I see I'm paying £1,200 a year, maybe £1,300 a year for that service, and all that's what I get. But it's different for Skegness Town Council. I totally agree about the cemetery. It's in a glorious state. The grass cutting is done well, and Tower Gardens is a gem, and we should be proud. And I'm happy enough to pay an extra tenner a year for those services. But yeah, and I think most people will be happy. The only thing I'm so sad to see go is the mayor making and the civic service. I hear what the town clerk has to say, but to me, being a mayor and you being a mayor, the proudest moment of your life will be with your family and your friends on the mayor making and raising money for the mayor's charity. And obviously the civic services where we host all the other civic that we know and other mayors and mayoresses and chairmen, etc., coming into our town. That is tradition in Skegness, and we're losing tradition all the time. If we can actually hold that, or maybe put it off for 1 year, but that's not fair on the next mayor after yourself, who's Councillor Carpenter or whoever that may be, for them to miss out. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. And maybe if we can or ask the town clerk if he can put the extra £3,000 back in, so that can happen. And obviously, it's just tradition, and we're losing tradition all the time. We've always showboat the mayor making, and it's made something special, and everyone remembers it in Skegness. It's something special, and we shouldn't lose traditions. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
I fully understand that, and it is a proud moment, I must say. It's a privilege to be here. Councillor Cunnington, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I understand everything that's been said. I totally thank the clerk, and I've had a conversation with the clerk regarding this budget. I've just got a couple of concerns. One is I'm really unsure as to the amount of software support that we've got in the budget. That seems to be a very large figure. I know we've been on this topic before, but it does really concern me as to how often we use this support and are we getting value for money on it. But for the clerk, really, the main point is how confident is our clerk on the sustainability of the cuts and the lack of provision he's put in there for the pension pot and the NI. If that causes a deficit going forward, how confident is he that that's the right thing to do on those two areas? Or could it bite us on the bum in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
I'll come back on the couple of the points that have been raised. Firstly, about the IT costs. First of all, the IT replacement budget is an in-year budget for replacing minor pieces of equipment, whereas the reserve is for a sort of major replacement at some point in the future, because it's like, say, you know, saving up to be able to do that. We're always, you know, quite prudent with the equipment that we have and try to, you know, ensure that we have the minimum cost on that. But the revenue, in-year revenue budget is different from the reserve in that respect. In terms of the software support, what you've got to bear in mind is that we now have a number of application systems. So we have an accounting system, we've got a payroll system, we've got a cemetery system, we've got a mapping system, we've got many of these systems, all of which are licensed and support, and they are part of the day-to-day running of the council's business. Now, as a town council, with, you know, the services that you offer, being able to offer, you know, being able to, you know, manage these services is quite a complex process. So we do need these systems in place to help and assist us. In terms of the software support for ARC, if you recall, actually, we're actually able to buy the Microsoft licenses through the supporting company, and actually the saving that we made on buying those licenses direct from Microsoft actually offset the cost of the support that we get from them. So that there wasn't actually a cost of doing that. It was good sense, because we now get telephone support, which means that anybody, regardless of their technical knowledge, can phone and get a problem resolved. And we do that, you know, it's happening all the time, and that's also supported us through home working. Unfortunately, you know, if I go back 8-9 years ago when I first started, my technical knowledge was a lot better and I did a lot of the technical support myself, but the systems have moved on, the technologies have moved on, and I haven't got either the knowledge, capability or capacity to actually be able to do that now. And other people in the office need to have a feeling that they've got support. So, for instance, even in the last week, there's been phone calls when the relationship between the local PC and the cemetery system stopped working. It wasn't either one. Both the software supplier and our IT support had to come in to actually resolve the problem. And that was done to enable a member of staff to carry on working. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to. So they're sort of very important there. Moving on to the pensions and the national insurance. We've gone back to the status quo here, which isn't an unreasonable position. The reason I originally put in an increase in those is because I was speculating that, given the Chancellor has a big hole in the national budget, how might the Chancellor try and fill that? And one way is that they may well put up national insurance contributions for employers. The employee one is obviously was part of the no increase within the manifesto. Now, I understand today that there has been a movement away from the manifesto anyway, so we might see increases in employee tax, national insurance and other contributions. But until the Chancellor makes a statement on that, we won't know. So I don't think it's an unsafe presumption for council to say that things should carry on as they are. but I just need to flag up that should the chancellor decide this would be a good way of reducing the government deficit, then that may mean that we're faced with an extra cost that we hadn't budgeted for. But that's going to be no different from any other business or authority in the country. So no worse position on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Steve Kirk over this. I think the clerk has gone back. I've gone over this budget. I can't see where he would get any further savings. So, 10.69%, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've been left on our own, even though we had a letter from the Minister, Robert Jenrick, saying that we should have received funds from East Lindsey District Council. They disagree. It was definitely addressed to town and parishes. As I said, have a word with your district council, and they said, I'm afraid not, you're getting nothing. So for the clerk to actually come back, pandemic, no help from government, no help from the district council in so much as passing on the little bit of the grant that we perhaps should have had. I think 10.69% is a well done to Steve and his team. The services that we do get from our staff are second to none. You've only got to look at the work that they do and know that it's second to none. It's as simple as that. So I've got no problem supporting 10.69%. The future of the 3%, etc. Like Steve said, I don't think we need to hold them to anything because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. The vaccines may work, they may not work. So we need to concentrate on what we've got now. And I think what he's done is actually remarkable to get us to this level where we are. I would like East Lindsey, if they're watching this YouTube video, to reread Robert Jenrick's letter, which I have a copy of last week, and then tell me how it is not, you should be passing money on to us. They might not like that, and I don't blame them, but that's what it says. See your principal council, East Lindsey. So, that would have brought the precept down. I don't know by how much, but who cares? It would have brought it down. So, I have no problem supporting this. The services we're getting, the services that we are doing for that is exceptional. Looking forward, you can look forward, but you can't really because we're in a pandemic. So I think we need to go with this and keep pressing East Lindsey. And I did email Matt Warman and Robert Jenrick 2 weeks ago about the letter saying, should we have had money? And not one of them, if you're watching this YouTube video, cheers guys, not one of them bothered replying. That's how much they care about Skegness Town Council. That's my rant over with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Totally agree with you, mate. I do think we've been left a bit out in the cold, but I think the decision we seem to be moving towards now is not to cut services and managing what we've got. And me personally, I'm quite happy with that. I just really don't want to cut services at all, because if we cut service and we spoil the offer the town has to offer, that will affect businesses, and that we can't afford to do that. And the motion brought, as you know, Danny, I called you about putting a motion towards that you and Councillor Anderson put together. I think it was brilliant. I think those councillors were a disgrace to get on that television and say what they said. An absolute disgrace. And really dishing the town and Chapel, Ingermills, Mablethorpe, Sutton-on-Sea, everything. They did a really big disservice. And I'm very much as one with you. It was a disgrace. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. I was going to use your name in vain at the time, but I was sure you said that on the particular night that you was appalled by them. I just want to come back just before we go move this forward. That everybody's set out what a good job we do. Absolutely excellent. The grass verges are excellent, and we must remember that we wanted to bring this in-house, and things are going to cost, and it's a way forward. Everything looks good. Not only do we cut the grass, We remove all the surplus grass and the leaves are blown away. It's trimmed, but before they cut the grass, they actually pick the litter up as well. And it all comes at a cost, and the outcome is absolutely fantastic. I've driven around on the grass verges down Lincoln Road, have looked good all summer. They've struggled a little bit with some of the trees, but that's down to LCC not cutting them back. I've raised some issues with that. I think some have been trimmed back, but that was due to bad weather. So would anybody else like to speak? We'll move this forward.
Mayor, I think Councillor Saxon has got his hand up.
Councillor Saxon.
Ignore me, please. I can't get rid of it. It keeps coming on and going off. Ignore me.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Saxon. Can you turn your microphone off, please? Can you work that one? Councillor, I think Councillor Dennis has left his hand up from last time. If not, I'll bring him back in a minute. Councillor Jimmy Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to come back in. Just a quick one. I totally agree with Councillor Anderson. To lose the mayoral engagement, that sort of thing, I think we need to try and get that back in if we can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks. I was just going to mention that it will cost pence to put that back in, Mr. Mayor. So can we ask the clerk to put that back in with an option in and an option out, please, in his budget papers if we agree it tonight? Thank you.
Thank you, Town Clerk.
Mayor, I think it would be about half a percent, something like that. Because 5,000, sorry, yeah, 5,000 is 1%, so 2,500 is about 0.5%.
Thank you, Councillor Dankirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The whole point of this budget is to get the absolute best value for our taxpayers, residents, and that is exactly what the clerk has done. I mean, Councillor Dennis was slammed for under elitism and various other things, but how many other parish and town councils have this ceremony where the public purse is paying for people to have, a meal and things like that? Yes, it's great. I appreciate that. But I don't know of any other council that does it, and I don't think it's right for the ratepayers to pay for that. If councillors were paying for it, or people invited were paying for it, happy, absolutely happy. If it's a ticketed event and you pay £15 a head, done, no problem. It's not for the ratepayers to pay. It's not delivering a service for the ratepayers. It needs to go. I would not support that being in the budget.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, I'd just like to come back on Councillor Dankirk's statement. Although it may seem like a waste of money, the invitations that are sent out to the gatherings are massively important for named charities. Whatever the charity might be, that few pence that every councillor turns up to, every resident pays into in a pence form, could raise thousands of pounds for very, very important charities where they don't have to worry about what they're putting in because they put a few pence in. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steve Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I propose this budget as written, not with the £2,500 in. In response to Councillor Finlay, I've had a mayor making night. Several of my colleagues on this council have had a mayor making night, and yes, they are very nice. Most of the people I invited would have paid to be there, and the amount raised for charity is normally less than the mayor making night might cost. So we might as well just put that money into our charities pot and give it to them. So I support this budget as written, not with mayor making and civic services put back in.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton, you've got your microphone off. I'll tell you. Councillor Mark Anderson, please.
Yeah, in answer to Councillor Steve Kirk and also Councillor Dan Kirk, I wish the same could be said for East Lindsey District Council and also Lincolnshire County Council, which spend taxpayers' money on civic events, hosted civic events for other dignitaries coming into the area, Lincolnshire County Council spends thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds on civic events per year. Judges' lodgings, the Lincolnshire Show, the chairman's charity events, all sorts. And the same could be said for East Lindsey District Council. When it regards to Skegness, all we're saying, as what Councillor Finlay says, I've raised over £80,000 for charities, local charities, in my three terms as mayor, and it's been proud to showboat the town so people can actually see what's happening in Skegness. They come from afar and see what's happening in Skegness, and if we can't showboat Skegness, and also, you know, being a mayor, as you know, Mr. Mayor, it's not a 40-hour-a-week job. It's you're constantly at it with your engagements and putting a tie on, putting a chain on, and speaking, and you don't get paid for it. You're proud to do it, and for one event to actually where you can have your family and friends, when you can pull your chest out and be proud, you know, and to raise the profile of the town and actually get some local charities money. I think it's money well worth spent, and I totally disagree with Councillor Kirks. Thank you.
Well, can I just come, just before I bring Councillor Dan Kirk in, and just to clarify things, I thought that this was the way forward where we were going, where we had our own building, where the mayor making money got spent back into the business itself. I thought that was what was happening. So I'm a little bit lost. I am just making this comment because I thought that's where we would be, where we'd be holding the reception in our own building now. We had the facility. It comes at a cost, but, you know, I'm here to listen to you guys, and I listen for all sides, and like you said, we shouldn't be spending ratepayers' money, but it's a tradition that's always carried on, and it will in a lot of places. But I just wondered where we were going with the new building and how we was going for future events, and I thought that's what we was going to do. And I'm happy to pay for that event out of my own pocket to be there, because whoever becomes mayor, it's a proud moment, and I think we should support them, even if it costs us ourselves. Councillor Dan Kirk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I quite concur. At no point did I suggest that it should be cancelled. I merely made a point that I don't believe the public purse should be paying for it. With regards to Councillor Anderson's comments on the spending of East Lindsey District Council and Lincolnshire County Council civic events, yeah, I quite agree. But we're not in control of their budgets. We're in control of the ratepayers of Skegness and our proportion of the precept. I just cannot justify that. And I quite agree. If we were to have it in our own building, I can very much guarantee that the cost per delegate would be significantly lower than if we were to have used venues of in historical times. I get that. I'm not saying cancel it, but I can't. It's just not justifiable. How can we justify that we're paying out of the public purse for a meal for 50, 100 delegates? Full stop. We as councillors receive an allowance to conduct our duty. I am not sure of any other parish council that does. Please let me know of any that do. I'd love to hear. And that is what that allowance is for, to cover our ongoing costs. And attending a civic event like mayor making, I believe it's a councillor's duty to attend that and to support the outgoing and the incumbent mayor 100%. But that should be funded not by the taxpayer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edgington, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Powerful emotive arguments coming from both sides, but I have to say I concur with Councillor Steve Kirk, and I will second his proposal that we support the budget proposals as laid before us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as Deputy Mayor and Mayor-elect, as you know, been Mayor before, I've already spoken with the Town Clerk previous to COVID. That was the intention last May. The Mayor making was going to be in the new Town Hall. It was going to be a buffet in the new Town Hall, and it was going to be an outside bar invited to provide drink. Totally go along with what you said, Mr. Mayor. Quite happy to fund myself don't see why the public of Skegness should pay the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I fully agree. And pointing out that we don't have to make huge profits on anything. We can be done at cost in house. I'm sure there's ways around it, and it'd be strange to see this civic event, but I agree with councillors where it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. Councillor Anderson, would you like to come back? Oh, sorry, Councillor Brooks, Danny Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it was a very, very proud moment when I was the mayor at the mayor making, but I have no problem it being in our own building. That's what we bought out. That's what we built our building for, to have these sort of events. And as Councillor Carpenter said, a buffet done at a reasonable price for us because it's our own building and it's paying for ourselves and our own building. I wouldn't have any problem with that. I'm quite happy to support the budget as it is. I do think we need to look at, I would say the majority of people who came to my mayor making would have paid to go. I've no two ways about that, but it was a proud moment. I don't want to see that event go, as I don't think anybody does. And if we can do it in our own building, in the Tower Gardens that we've built, people will see that actually we're putting all our money and all our efforts back into our own building. And I'm sure Steve can come up with a decent price for us. Thank you. If he sharpens his pencil.
He's got no pencil left at the minute, I don't think. Councillor Sid Dennis, please.
Yeah, I totally agree with Danny and you to a certain degree, Mark. But I certainly, it was a very proud moment for me. And I think it would be a real loss of tradition. So I think really if we just get on with voting for the budget, and I'm sure that this will come up again and we can discuss it on another night, you know, before we all fall off as perches here, because it's time's marching on. So let's get this vote out of the way. I don't mean to preempt you, Mark, but I think we can bring about this another day. But I would really hate to see that tradition be finished, especially now we've got our own venue. So I agree with all councillors in general.
Thank you. Councillor Dankirk, quickly.
Very quickly. I'm just a bit confused with regards to, at no point have myself or Steve said that it should go at all. It's going, it's continuing. That's not what we proposed. Just, we can't see the public purse paying for it. That's the last time I'm going to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
George
Saxon,
point
sorry.
of information,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, because this mayor making is not what the council pays. It comes out the mayor's allowance. The mayor gets an allowance.
No, Councillor Anderson, that isn't the case. It is actually now a separate budget.
I know it is. I know, but it was split in half.
For good purpose, which is in order that firstly the council could collect the VAT back on it.
Correct.
So
originally it was 5,500 whatever pounds per year, an allowance. What an East Lindsey District Councillor get as an allowance of not even a third what a county councillor gets per year, an allowance. Half of that was meant for the work that a mayor does, and also half of that was for the mayor making events. It was split in half for VAT purposes, as what the town clerk has said. So all you're doing is taking away a person's allowance. And that brings in now, if somebody who can't afford to have that event, you're discriminating against them. That's totally against the equalities of the council. You're totally discriminating against people who can't afford to actually pay for an event if they are on benefits, etc. It goes against your own policies. How can you vote for that? I just don't understand it.
Thank you. Councillor Carpenter, did you want to speak again?
Sorry, left my hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dankirk.
Didn't think I'd need to clarify, but I'll do that again. I said it should not stop. People attending should pay for their seat, for their ticket, not the mayor, not out of their personal allowance, not out of the public purse. The people that are attending I'm sure the pot, how much that would cost per head in our new civic building would be considerably lower. I just cannot justify us, and we've requested the clerk to spend hours sharpening this pencil to cut absolutely anything possible. And we're debating this. It seems a tad ironic, hypocritical to some degree. But that being said, it's all part of the debate, and it's really positive to have this sort of debate. But I cannot imagine the residents of Skegness agreeing to pay for other people, 60 to 100 people, to have a meal at their expense.
I'm now going to move this to the vote. We've had it proposed and seconded. It'd be down to us to honour this event and make it happen as councillors. And if we invite guests ourselves, if you're invited, you pay for your guest. I agree. We're not going to lose this tradition, I'm sure. We've had it clarified. Everybody's speaking from the same book. So it's been proposed and seconded that we go. Councillor Saxon, you've got your microphone on again.
Yeah, you know that it is up to be met, and they are.
We're going to stop. Can't hear a word of it. Sorry.
No, I mean for what the thing.
I can't hear a word of it.
And
I don't know whether anybody else can hear him, but I can't hear a word.
Okay,
Take it up.
Okay.
Couldn't hear anything there. Sorry. Right, so it's been proposed and seconded that we go with the budget as it is. Obviously, we're not getting anywhere if not. As I said, we'll have to make sure this continues this tradition, and we go with it. If we're going to a party, then we're going to a party, and we should help fellow colleagues celebrate their special night. And I think it'd be the right thing to do. So we've had it proposed and seconded that we move with the budget as it is. So all in favour, please show. Let's see what we've got there. We got the amount there. Have you got the figures, Town Clerk? Still got councillors vote to vote yet.
I think you may have to do a for and against, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. So if you've not got it, raise your hands if you want to raise your hands at the minute, because there is some missing. Councillor Saxon's got his up. So we've just got Councillor Paul Sutton, Councillor Anderson and Councillor Brooks that hasn't voted for it. So we've got all those four. So we're Councillor Brooks, are you for or against?
I'm going to abstain, thank you.
Abstain. Councillor Anderson?
I'm abstaining as well because I wasn't given the option.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Cunnington? For, against, or abstain?
For. My hand was up earlier.
Oh, sorry, I'm not looking at all these. And Councillor Sutton is there, but his microphone, I can't see his video, and he hasn't voted on screen. So there we go. You got the voting. Thank you. Right, then moving on. We must be mindful of the time. We've used some battery life tonight. Okay, agenda item number 13: tree survey. The report attached. Seek approval to undertake works in response to a tree survey undertaken in Vine and Coronation Walks. Town Clerk, please.
Right, I'll try and do this quickly, but still respect, obviously, the letter that we had in earlier on. The report's in front of you, and that basically says that we've had a...
Councillor Dennis, you've still got your microphone on, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No problem.
Yeah, so we've had a tree survey done of the areas Coronation Walk and Vine Walk. We've got further surveys going on of other pieces of land that the council own, but this is the area that we're looking at the moment, Coronation Walk, Vine Walk. Essentially, there's a lot of ash trees, obviously, in this area, and we all know that there is a problem with ash dieback, which in accordance with our agreement with East Lindsey, they are responsible for dealing with problems that result from ash dieback. The position I'm taking at this moment in time is that all of the problems with the ash trees are as a result of ash dieback, because there are consequential issues. So things like fungal infections and lesions on trees and things like that are often as a result of ash dieback taking hold and weakening the tree's immune system. So I've been in conversation with East Lindsey. I've also been raising the issue of the timescale and the speed at which they're moving to deal with the bigger problem. And there will be further discussions on that, but I'm hopeful that we will get a positive response from them. Certainly there's been a change in the tone over the last few weeks on that. So what do we have to do? Well, our arboriculturalist has identified a number of trees where we as the town council need to take action now. And we need to actually go out and get some prices for that. And at the same time, I think it would be useful to be able to secure the services of a tree surgeon that we can then call at relatively short notice and have known prices for, because trying to do things on an ad hoc basis, for example, if after a storm, when we haven't got prices up front, can leave us in a vulnerable position to being exploited, especially if we need somebody to attend site, you know, within a couple of days to deal with an urgent problem. So I would plan to put that into that quotation, so that we get some quotations of the types of work that that we would typically have done. Referring to the letter, the lady who's written that does back onto a number of trees, some of which are quite large, some of which we know go over boundary fences. But what I would say to council and to her is that council needs to respond to all of the trees using the same policy and the same approach. So if the arboriculturalist, who's qualified and experienced and is giving us professional advice, says that a tree needs to either be pruned or felled, then that is what council should take action to do that. There may have to be a tree preservation order might need to be lifted in order to carry out that work. That would be the process that we would go down. Council already has a policy that says we won't do work unless we're advised to. One of the reasons behind that is if we carry out work to a tree, a healthy tree, as soon as you start cutting it around, it introduces pathogens and infections into that tree, actually can weaken it. So that would be our approach. There is always a common law approach which says that an owner of a property can cut overhanging branches at their own expense, and anybody in these walks is able to do that as long as they abide by the regulations that relate to tree preservation orders. We've already said within our policy that we recognise that that might happen, and we wouldn't want any of the arisings back, and we would expect all of the costs to be met by the resident in that respect. So I think we've got a strong policy. A couple of bits of legal advice raised by the resident. The case law that was presented is totally irrelevant in the case in this particular case. Yes, it is a local authority that was sued, but it relates to specific known incidents where harm would happen to houses, and the particular local authority knew that harm would happen, had planned to do the work but never actually carried it out, and therefore they were negligent, and they were found to be negligent. So that isn't the case here. What we're doing is we're taking professional advice, following that professional advice, and so we're doing everything that we reasonably can to make sure that our trees are safe and well looked after. The other quote that was made was in respect of nuisance. But again, that the quote that was made wasn't the full quote of that part of the regulation. It does specifically refer to Acts of Parliament, and in that respect, nuisance isn't necessarily how the layman would interpret it. So nuisance could be where it's going to cause harm or damage, as well as obviously the health and safety issues, which if there is a health and safety concern, then we would obviously treat that very seriously and would act either on that professional advice, or if it's obvious to the layman, as we did this summer where a branch was hanging off after a storm, we had the branch removed. So in those circumstances, we do act swiftly to remedy anything. So what I'm asking here in this report is to authorise me to go ahead, produce a programme of work which we will take from the tree survey that's been produced by the professional, put that into a form that can be quoted against, to get quotations against that, and then come back to council to ensure that we've got the budget to actually have the work undertaken. We may need to use reserves to do that. Hence, that's why it has to come back. So I don't know what the cost will be. So the recommendations are set out in 3.1, so that I can take questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. We've got the recommendations in front of you. I think all the information is there. Can we just be also mindful of the time? We've still got a few agenda items and time is pushing on, so we can move this on. It's all there in front of you. Councillor Dennis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could I move to approve, please?
Thank you. Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, happy to second the recommendations as written, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. You've had it proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. It's carried, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 14, the neighbourhood development plan, a report attached to seek approval for the commission of a further piece of work following East Lindsey District Council's response to the NDP submission.
Move the report, move the recommendation.
Okay, Councillor Finlay, you got your hand up? No. Do we have a seconder? Been moved. Second, Councillor Jimmy Brooks. We've had it proposed. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
So we have a proposer and a seconder. Hands are flashing up and down. Okay, all go to the vote. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 15, the general report attached to update the council on current issues and decisions made, to note the report and adopt the decisions made.
So very briefly through those, there was an incident with the railings. Car went into the railings, and we will get those repaired. We haven't had any, satisfactory response in terms of identifying the individual who has done that. So that may come out in due course, but the railings need to be repaired. An update on COVID. Obviously, this gets, even since I've written this, there's been numerous announcements. So essentially, we're continuing in terms of working from home where possible. We've shut the cafe and the hall. In fact, the whole building is shut to the public at the moment. And we've furloughed the cafe staff on 80% of their costs. We're also applying for the business grant that helps to keep people in employment. That's gone in. We won't know for 2 weeks whether or not we've been successful in that. As I mentioned before, the cafe stock and that has been reduced and preserved as best we can in order to reduce that. I think given the announcements that have been made thus far and the likelihood that the council is going to be in or in a higher tier area, I would propose that the cafe remains now closed until the new year, and that we continue with the furlough arrangement with staff on that basis. My reasoning there is that many of our customers are more older and vulnerable people, and I'm wondering whether they would come out, especially as that may jeopardise their opportunity to have Christmas with family. So I think if we brought the staff back stocked up, there is a likelihood that we would actually not operate, you know, in a way that we should. So I think we continue as we are, as long as the furlough arrangements continue, which I think they will, and we will continue with the staff working as office staff, primarily working at home, going in to deal with post urgent things like printing agendas and anything to do with the management and maintenance of the building and things like checking the fridges. So moving on to the grounds team are working pretty much as near normal as possible. They're taking extra precautions in terms of vehicle use. The play parks have been shut because the regulations are such, we can't really meet them, to be honest, without a big extra cost in terms of cleaning, having people on hand, you know, being able to regulate them. So we have closed them. Cemetery remains open. Funerals have been taking place as normal there, albeit with the regulated numbers. And I'm still pursuing East Lindsey for additional grants that we should have had previously. And I have now put in a freedom of information request asking what the policy is, which councils, other councils have received funding from them, because I know that at least one has received a fairly substantial amount of money, and I wanted to find out which councils have had that funding, what the policy is, what the procedure is, and who's making the decisions regarding this funding. Because I think that will be quite revealing, and hopefully, if that comes through, it might either help us to ascertain how we might get some additional funding, or at very least put our minds at rest that we are getting, you know, that not getting it is correct. So the only other thing to report is Scarborough Avenue car park. Some work starts there tomorrow. This was the work that was previously reported to council some months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cunnington.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, must have still been up.
No problem. Councillor Steve Kirk, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, everything the town clerk said is extremely sensible. We'd expect nothing less. I think all the decisions he's made are correct, and had he brought them to council, we would have agreed with them before. My question, I have a question. The railings, once they are repaired, will it be as good as, because the report mentions repairing and strengthening. I would like to think that if we put the railings back, they are in as good, if not better condition than before the car collided with them. If that is the case, then I'm quite what is written.
Councillor Jimmy Brooks, can I just remind Councillor Saxon he's got his microphone. I can see you've got your hand up, but you've got your microphone on, which nobody can hear anybody else when it's on. Councillor Jimmy Brooks, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question for the clerk. Have you tried to apply for the grant that was on the 17th of November that's just been released, which is for businesses that have been closed, which is East Lindsey? Thank you.
There's a nod, yes, thank you. Councillor Saxon.
Just a quick one on the car park. Has any approaches made to Tom the actual staff car at the back that floods all the time because the tarmac is like swimming pool. I wonder if you know whether they're going to keep correct it.
Mayor, I think I've got the gist of that. Yes, the car park at the back, we're aware of the flooding issues. The contractor is aware of it, and in fact, there has been some remedial work started today, and that will be done under defects for the building. Referring back to the railings that Councillor Kirk raised, yes, the railings will go back as they were. Some of the metal is having to be replaced because it was damaged, and the strengthening is on some of those railings they have angled metal that goes into concrete. We've got to re-strengthen that area because it's taken those concrete areas out as well. So I'm hopeful that the railings will be back in as good a condition as, at least as good a condition as they were before, and that those sections will probably be repainted, so will be repainted, so they'll probably look newer, making us think we need to do the rest.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a proposal that we note the report and adopt the decisions made? Councillor
I already have.
Councillor Kirk did.
Sorry, Councillor Kirk, yeah. Councillor Brooks, Jimmy Brooks. All in favour then please show. Thank you, that's carried. Lower your hands, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 16, responses to letters sent following previous motions attached. To note the responses received from Matt Warman, MP, and the Clinical Commissioning Group. Councillor Edgington. Councillor Edgington.
Sorry, I was looking at the papers. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'll move that we note it, but I just want to make this observation very briefly. I read the paper and I just cannot believe, as what I said before in my motion before, which was second with my seconder, I cannot believe that they've closed the urgent care centre down in the middle of a pandemic between 8 o'clock at night, sorry, it's from 10 o'clock at night till 8 a.m. in the morning to support Boston Hospital, because that's what it is, to support Boston Hospital, where they have a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 24 A&E facility there, and where we now in Skegness have no facility. It just beggars belief, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson. Councillor Dennis, please.
Second the motion.
Okay, thank you. I've already proposed and seconded. All in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. Agenda item number 17, the climate survey. Survey is attached. To note and adopt will complete the survey.
Mayor, this has come out from now. Many parish and town councils are now declaring a climate emergency, and as such, they consider climate change in everything they do. I think this is something that council may wish to come back to in terms of the actual policy in the future, and maybe part of its business plan. But in the meantime, how does this council want this to be answered?
Thank you, Councillor Steve Kirk.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was going to comment that a recent change we've made at East Lindsey through our new officer is that every decision we make, we have to relate it to climate change and the environment. And yeah, I think it's something that we should visit as a council as well. When we make these recommendations, when we decide to do pieces of work, how does it affect our environment, not just nationally, but our local environment as well? So I think that's a piece of work that we should do, and if it needs to be a motion on full council to do that, then so be it.
Thank you. Councillor Claxton. Councillor
Sorry,
Claxton.
no, sorry, left hand up.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, please.
Yeah, I'm happy enough to second that. I think we need to do the work as a public organisation regarding climate survey. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got it proposed and seconded. Is that to that we make this change and note and complete this survey? So all in favour, please show. Thank you. Right, well, that's brought us to the end of the meeting. Thank you for your time. Anybody watching out there, we may be in for some news that we didn't really want to hear tomorrow, according to our MP, that we might be going into tier 3, which is not really good. But the way to do it, we've got to listen to them, hands, face, space, and just take care of one another and try and adhere to all the rules. And let's get this down as quick as we can. Let's bring the tiers down as fast as we can. We've still got a couple of weeks before the review, and then we've got another 2 weeks before the next review. So, fingers crossed. Let's work hard on it. Let's push it out to the community to get these figures down. And